This episode is sponsored by Local First Arizona. Local First Arizona is dedicated to the success of Arizona's locally owned businesses and communities across the state, including Tucson. As the largest local business coalition in the country, Local First assists independently owned businesses of all sizes create jobs and strengthen the local economy. Local First also works to achieve racial equity, reduce environmental impacts, improve healthy food access, and develop economic opportunity in rural, tribal, and urban communities. Learn more at localfirstaz.com and find a directory of locally owned businesses near you. This episode is sponsored by Brickbox Brewery, a new company concept brought to you by Thunder Canyon Brewery team, bringing a new take on downtown Tucson entertainment, dining, and nightlife, continuing to provide space for art and community with the goal of inclusion and prosperity. Starting April, Thunder Canyon Brewery becomes Brickbox, located at 220 East Broadway Boulevard, downtown Tucson.
Me and my friends were making custom t-shirts, and in high school we would go to this little sports store that did like they did all the varsity jackets and gym shirts for the school. But one day we were like, we could probably go have them just put something on the shirt for us. Like, yeah, why don't we go ask? It was just that, that idea that we wanted to create or make a statement through a t-shirt. So for me to be here, to have had the store for 4 years, to like be consistently creating with clothing, I mean, it feels like it was inevitable. My name's Nick Arcade. I'm the owner, creator of Black Broccoli. It's a reworked vintage, upcycled apparel brand based out of Tucson. I've been in Tucson seven and a half years. Moved out this way from the Chicago area. And I'd say to take it to a sports reference, which I love, it made me feel like excellence was normal.
Right.
Because I grew up in the 90s and I got to watch Mike and the Bulls just dominate the league for, a solid decade. So it was like, that was what my, parades at Grant Park was the norm. So there was always that level of excellence that was set. There was always something going on. There was always something, a new artist coming out of the city or, things of that nature. So I think it made me feel like the bar was high. So that was something that I kept in mind as I started my journey creatively. And then honestly, being from the Midwest, I feel like there's a core set of values. There's, one of the things that I think about a lot is like, I was raised not to brag or to beg. If there was something that I wanted to achieve, then it was on me to put the work in to get there. So I say just, there's a general feeling in the Midwest of like, a sense of community, a sense of hard work, and I think that has had a major impact on me creatively and just as a person.
What inspired you to start Black Broccoli, and how did the idea for the brand come about?
I was selling clothes online I want to say, I, I'm not even gonna waste the time to pinpoint the year, but first. I started selling clothes online. I was hanging out with some homies that uh, I was making music with, and we were traveling a lot. Virtual Vertigo is the name of the crew. We were going on mini tours, and they were like super into collecting like the rarest vintage pieces that you could find. Yeah. So as a result, like we're on the road with them, and they want to hit, the thrift store and every spot that we go to. So it was just kind of like, oh, that sparked something in me to start collecting like the things that all of the starter jackets I didn't get when I was a kid, or all the Bulls tees I missed out on. So it just kind of became like a passion of mine, and it hit a point where my parents were like, "Yo, you need to do something with all this stuff that you have in our basement. It's collecting dust. It's taking up space. Figure it out." Yeah. So I started resell that kind of sparked the idea to resell a few pieces that I wasn't super keen on, and then I graduated with a degree in media studies. I was doing an internship at a public access TV station I thought I would get a job. I thought that I would be somewhere, behind a camera, just low key, and that didn't work out. Yeah. So a conversation with my father actually is what sparked me making clothes, because he was telling me stories about how he grew up in Chicago, and he was making his own, like he was making vests and making hats from scratch. And he was just like, I pretty much was like, is that difficult? You think it's something I could do? He's like, well, if you put your mind to it. Yeah. So I just kind of started taking some of the stuff apart that I had been collecting, and kind of Frankenstein things together and just experimenting. And then shortly after that, I moved here, and I kind of jumped into, I didn't have a job when I moved here. So I started doing markets. And just, I just recently found my first price list from like the first thing I did out here. And it was just like a sheet of notebook paper with Sharpie, with like t-shirts, $15, like hats, 15, just like, I started, which is, that's key. It's like, if you want to do something, like you have to start somewhere. Yeah. So it was just like, I started doing events out here, and it kind of snowballed because when I first moved out here, I was still doing like beat sets and doing like pushing buttons and performing. So the first piece I think that like really caught people's eye was this Bulls denim jacket I did. I cut out the front decal off of a old championship shirt, sewed it to the back, cut up a hat, sewed those patches on the front, and then I went to, what's that spot called? There's a spot on 4th. It's called, I think, Foam Fabric and More. They do like upholstery, but I approached them because I saw that they had all these like very interesting, like almost leather looking fabrics. Yeah. So I wanted to see if I could just buy some scraps. So I found some like red, almost like a red leather piece, made a stencil of the Bulls logo, cut each piece out individually, sewed it to the front, and wore that to pushing buttons. And people were like, yo, where is this jacket from? I'm like, no, I made it. And people were like, you made it? And I'm like, yeah. Like, you think you could make me one? Yeah. Well, so that kind of, that was like the origin of Black Broccoli out here, where it was just like, I started as, I'm getting ahead of myself, started as the thrift advocate, and then eventually switched it to black broccoli when I opened the store in 2019.
Okay.
But that was pretty much the origins. I just kind of came out here, packed up a car with all my belongings, drove 1,700 miles with no, it's just, in hindsight, it's kind of crazy, but it was necessary to get here to this point. So I'd say that's the origins pre-store of Black Broccoli.
Who are your biggest influences?
My family, honestly. My family and my upbringing are something that I draw from consistently. Like, if I ever am stuck and I'm looking for an idea, I can think about, a specific moment from my childhood, or, something that my father may have said to me, or an album he would play, or, it's a really like a treasure trove of inspiration. I don't think that I'll ever, not do that for as long as I'm creating. But as far as other inspirations, music is a big one for me.
Yeah. He's playing Sly and the Family Stone with Locked in.
Yes,
on
sir.
the stage, so I was like, okay, lock in here. You got some alignment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I can pick up that you're musically inclined, and you can see how you weave it into your fabric and everything that you create.
Absolutely.
Where does the name Black Broccoli come from?
Another good question. And I've answered this question several different ways over the years, but it's a vehicle for my creativity. It's, to me, I started with the logo, which is just an outline of my natural hair, which a lot of people still don't catch, which is interesting to me. But the people, and I think that's another thing that's interesting, is the people that know, and I think the other people that gravitate towards what I do and don't catch it, that's totally fine, because once you create something and put it out there, how people interact with it, you can't control. So to me, Black Broccoli is me. It's my journey. It's my upbringing. It's the sum of my influences. It just kind of encompasses all of those things for me.
Go into some of the challenges that it came with starting your own clothing brand and how you overcame some of those challenges.
Ooh. I will start with time management, which is my arch nemesis. But it was, creating is fun. That's the fun part. Making things is great. But there's a whole business side of it that if you don't take care of it, then you can't have a brand.
Right.
You can't have a business if you don't have some sort of structure. And those two things are in conflicts. That creative part of your mind and the business part of your mind are constantly in conflict, because it's I want, at the beginning especially, there was a lot of times where people would want to shop with me and they're like, oh, well, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And my natural instinct at the time was that, well, you want to shop with me, then I'll just give you a discount.
Yeah.
But it's you can't run a business.
Discounting gonna go broke.
Exactly. So it was just learning that you have to adhere to a certain set of principles to be successful as an entrepreneur. And although it's nice that people want to support you, you still have to you don't want it for people for that to get around oh yeah, if you just go to him. He'll give you a discount.
Right.
Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's still, time management is still a big thing. And then I'd say, the way I work is, I take things from the thrift store and upcycle and put my own spin on them. But when you do that, the downside is that sometimes you'll only have one size, or you only have one of something. And although like the exclusivity is great and it makes people, want that thing, once you can't supply it, then that becomes a problem. And that's something that I kind of started to experience, is that, yeah, the one-of-ones are great, but that's not sustainable. You have to have something else for people to buy, because once one person buys of one of one, then that's gone. And even if somebody else wants to come spend money on that, you don't have that. So,
Yeah.
You're missing out on sales at the same time. So that's been something that I'm still actively figuring out how to have that balance of having those things that are sustainable, but then also having other things that people can buy in their size that, are always available for people to purchase, to keep things moving, to fund by, other projects.
You've explored various art mediums, including mixed media and music production. How do these different forms of expression influence each other in your work?
They all have a similar process to a certain degree. I think one of a good friend of mine said it best. He was like, you approach everything the same way. Everything is layered, whether it's, how you chop a sample, or how you, approach a denim jacket, or how you would approach a piece of artwork. It's a layered process. It's never really finished. It's like, it's finished when it's due, but at the same time, I'd have things in the store that would be sitting on the rack for 6 months, and then one day I'd have an idea and I can just go pick it up, add those things, and then, represent it as something completely new. So I'd say they all share like similarities as far as how I approach them. But then at the same time, also can be very, very different results. Like a approach, there's a lot of similarities, but I would say a lot of times the results are very different. But still, they all have that kind of like same through line that is like my style of creating.
Yeah, and I get a sense of how you work. You have experience coming up in the 90s, so you probably saw the tail end of like the cassette tape. So where you playing music and where you stop it at is where you come back to it later. So that's how I look at your work. How you say you can have something for 6 months and come back to it, be like, I got something else to put on it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Where does hip hop intersect with fashion for you? And was there a point where one formed from the other?
Ooh, these are all good questions. So hip hop for me, is woven in everything I do. But I would say a lot of times people would say there's four elements of hip hop, but I think that fashion needs to be included as one of those elements, because I fashion and hip hop, the fashion aspect of it informs people that you're of the culture,
Right.
that you understand what is going on in the culture, so that that comes with a, I don't want to say uniform, but it's a part of it.
Yeah.
You could think of your favorite rapper and also think of the eras of his career and connect it with what he was wearing at the time,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I think those things are forever linked, and I think you know especially I would say that started in no, it would have been the 80s too. It was always important. I'm like, when did what? No, it was always important. It was the 80s. It was Dapper Dan. It's the Eric B. and Rakim album cover with the Dapper Dan jackets. It's, it's 90s. This Daylight with the leather medallions. It's like it's always been a part of it.
Yeah, I still stay draped in camo all the time because of
Exactly.
Nas, Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, just the visual, the videos, and that was like their uniform, so to speak.
Exactly.
So it just bled into the culture and everybody else picked it up. So fashion is an important element that needs to be definitely acknowledged more. Yeah, you're right about that. Can you describe your creative process when designing new pieces for Black Brooklyn?
Chaotic. But also it's fun. It's fun when I get to the end point when something is done. It's not always the idea part. Like it's a series of light bulb moments, and then it's like that in between time where it's like, I don't know where this is going, and then the figuring out. I mean, it's for sure chaotic, but it's a lot of times it'll start with music. Everything I do, I try to work in a rhythm.
Right.
So whether it's a line from a song that sparks an idea, it could be an album cover I'm looking at. It's hard. It's honestly hard to describe it because it varies. Because depending on, I could be in a thrift store and just come across the most basic, crew neck sweater that you ever seen in your life. But then I'll remember that I have this small piece of a Chicago Bulls shirt that I had in a bin somewhere in the corner of my closet. But it's like this, like I have to have this catalog of everything that I have, and then be able to access that while I'm out thrifting and put it together in my head. It took me a while to get there though. At first when I first moved here, I was messing up a lot of clothing and wasting money.
Yeah.
And I got to that point where I can't do this anymore. It's not sustainable. I'm gonna be broke. It's like I have to sell these things. I can't mess them up. So it was that necessity of like, you have to make something of this because you need to sell it because you got to go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Got to eat.
Exactly.
Can you expound on the saying limitation forces innovation, and why did you utilize this saying for your branding?
That goes back to honestly what I was just talking about. It's the ability to make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I was taught very early on. It's something that I saw my parents do. uh, a little bit of groceries and stretching it a little bit, a little bit of this, a little. It's all of those things. It's woven into who I am.
Yeah.
It's the ability to have a little bit of resources and find some sort of creative solution,
Right.
and get to an end point. And I think it just really, it really encompasses what I do and who I am. It's, you have to find a solution, you figure it out.
Right.
So I felt like that was something that people needed to see on things, and that for people to make that connection, that's what Black Broccoli is. It's
right.
The ability to, innovate, in spite of limitations.
What drew you to fashion as a primary form of artistic expression, and how does it differ from your other art forms?
One thing I realized in the past couple of years is that fashion was something that was always around. It was always something I was paying attention to. It's just like my uncles would have something fly on. Like I just was going through my mom's old photos, and one of my uncles that passed since I lived here, he had this all over print Malcolm X t-shirt on. In one of the images, he always had like a crazy like baseball hat snapback, like every team that you could think of. And it was just like, oh, these I've always been around it. It's always something I paid attention to. Everybody in my family always had their own style or way of dress, or their own way of approaching fashion. But it wasn't something that we talked about. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, well, Uncle Danny, he likes to wear the, baggy cargo pants, or it's just those things that are constantly around. And then when I was in high school, which would have been like early 2000s, that was like the inception of kind of streetwear as we know it. It was, I think the 100 started at that time. It was like Billionaire Boys Club, Ice Cream, Echo, and Ichi, all of those brands that were in the Source magazine, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And those are the things that me and my friends would clip out and hang on our walls. And it was us being, as into hip hop as we were and still are to this day, it's all interconnected. So it feels like something that I was meant to do.
Yeah.
I got here a roundabout way, but it was something that in hindsight, I was meant to do. I started learning Photoshop and Illustrator when I was in high school in art class. And that, that kind of took me away from traditional art, because I saw like digital media as a quicker way to do those same things that I was doing, on canvas. And then to transition it to making t-shirts. And me and my friends were making custom t-shirts, and in high school we would go to this little sports store that did like they did all the varsity jackets and gym shirts for the school. But one day we were like, we could probably go have them just put something on the shirt for us. Like, why don't we go ask? It was just that, that idea that we wanted to create or make a statement through a t-shirt. So for me to be here, to have had the store for 4 years, to like be consistently creating with clothing, I mean, it feels like it was inevitable. Music production is a it's a whole different animal, but there is, again, there's those similarities where it's like the basis of an idea can come from something very small. It could be something, you know, you're listening to a record and you hear like the smallest piece. You're like, I can turn that 4-bar loop into a whole, you know, 3-minute song.
Yeah.
But it's different. It's different in terms of, I say time. I say time is the main thing, because from start to finish, it's probably, it could take, a piece of clothing could take however long it takes. It could take a month. I could see something today and finish it tomorrow. But it's just, there is no, there's no set frame of time.
Yeah.
I would say.
What brought you to Tucson, and how does the city compare to the Midwest, Chicago area in terms of artistic inspiration?
I came out to Tucson actually to pursue music. I was in a collective called Entrepreneurial Gang, and I moved out here after I visited twice, and I had never seen mountains before. It's crazy. Like I grew up, you know, in the Midwest, and like trees, grass, all very normal. Coming out here, it was like I could stand in the center of the street and look at the mountains. And that was just like so incredible to me. So I was like, this feels like some place that I could be for a while. Yeah. And
now, was that during, what season was that? Was it the summertime?
It was definitely not the summer.
Yeah.
It was not the summer. I didn't have a real idea of what the summer was out here when I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna move to Tucson. That's different.
Yeah.
That's different. But at the same time, it's like when I moved out here, the day I packed up the car, it was negative 32 degrees. Damn. So 110.
I'll take that over, yeah.
Negative 32. You know. But I came out here. I had friends out here. You know, they were doing their thing. So it was like, let's come out here. Let's click up and see what we can do. See what we can get accomplished.
Yeah.
But then, as I tend to do, I just kind of veered off on my own path.
Yeah.
But Tucson, in comparison to the Midwest, it's a pace thing. I think it's I'm used to things moving a little faster in the Midwest, so I think that like there was an adjustment period because it is a little slower paced here.
Yeah.
But then once I figured out how to maneuver and navigate that, it benefited me because like there isn't those same barriers to of entry for certain things. Mm-hmm. So in order for me to have a store in Chicago or even in the town I'm from, the rent would have been astronomical.
Right.
Like it wouldn't have even been an option. I wouldn't have the time to even experiment or try it out and figure out what works. You have to pay rent. It's, you know, X amount of dollars. If you don't have it, that's it. Your dreams are done. But here there was an opening on 4th, on 7th. Call the number. There wasn't a lot of hoops I had to jump through to do it. It was just, I took the time to build up a name and did the markets, and then I was able to, you know, have the opportunity to open a store, and it's just not it wouldn't have been feasible
Yeah.
back in the Midwest, honestly. I think being able to have it be a little slower and being able to step back and assess the things that I need to do, like the areas that I can improve on, you know, as a person, and then being able to have that growth in my, in my creative journey, and being able to have the opportunities to, have the store and, get recognized for having the store. And, it's been great, and the city's been like very supportive.
Explain a little further how the community in Tucson supports and nurtures your creative endeavors, and if so, how?
Opportunity. The opportunity for me as somebody who just like I got my first sewing machine, I want to say the year I moved out here. My sister sent it to me, shout out to her. But it was just like it was immediate. As soon as I started making things, people supported. There are people that have been supporting me since those first markets that I started doing out here 7 years ago, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
They're still like, they'll send me pictures where like, oh, remember this? And I'm like, that's, you look at your old work, oh, that's great. You still have that. Thank you. But like, it's still great to see those things and be able to look at the progress that you made, and to have those people, be invested in what you're doing. So I would say opportunities. I just got the opportunity to design a shirt for a program at Pima called the Men of Color Achievement Program. And that's not, that wasn't even something that I would have thought about. Like, I wouldn't have reached out to somebody to do that, but they were like, oh, Black Broccoli, like, we've seen your work. Would you like to do this? Mm-hmm. So, oh, that's awesome. And that's something that speaks to me. So really it's been the opportunities I've had, and the community showing up for me. I was able to do in a pop-up for a month at Bookman's. And like some of these things, like I'm not from here, so I don't always understand, like what a staple Bookman's is in the community. But somebody that I knew from back home was like, yo, you're doing a pop-up at Bookman's? And one of my friends lived out there, and it was like, that's like, Bookman's is a big deal out there. Yeah. I didn't know, but at the same time, it's like, it's a great opportunity, and I'm thankful for it. And people showed up and they supported it. So yeah, I really can't say enough about the support I get here.
How would you define success as an artist, and in contrast as an entrepreneur?
Ooh. As an artist, I would say freedom. And I mean, honestly, as an entrepreneur, I'd probably say the same thing, because if you're operating at a certain level, then you have the ability to keep building on your ideas, and pushing the envelope as far as making the projects bigger. It's as an entrepreneur, if you have a store, it's a bigger space, or it's more space, or it's a better location. So I feel like freedom would be my answer for both of those. But also artistically, being able to carve your own niche and not worry about what anybody else is doing. having your own audience and knowing that when you present something to them or when you drop something, that they're going to support it. Like, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to chase what, you know, this brand's doing or, you know, try to stay on trend. It's that you have told enough of your story that people connect to it and want to continue to support you because they're invested and they want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
So I would say that also applies to the artistic success and how I see it.
What are your biggest or most significant milestones thus far?
I would say my whole in 2019 when I did the Bookman's pop up, my family was here, so I had my whole family in my store, and for me it was like for them to see what I had been doing, you know, for the last 5-6 years, like for them to see that, like it's different when they see a picture or I tell them like I'm doing this or that. For them to actually experience what I was doing, for me it was a milestone. But also being able to see Black Broccoli in print. I was in one of the Tucson travel guides. One best local clothing designer, I want to say not last year, year before last, one of those things. And was on the cover of the Catalina Foothills magazine, which I hadn't heard of before, but it's still it's a magazine cover. And then just to see people connect with my work, that there's complete strangers.
Yeah.
And I think that people discovering my work randomly through the internet, is always cool for me. That always feels like another step in the right direction when somebody that I never even heard of from Baltimore finds my website and orders something. It's just like, I don't know how you found it, but I'm glad that you saw it and you said, I need to, spend my hard-earned money on it. Those always feel like, those small milestones. And then something that I have coming up is I just did the cover art for an artist out of New Jersey by the name of Brain Orchestra. And that's project's going to be released on vinyl. So that'll be my first vinyl cover.
That's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you, bro. But that's going to be released overseas through a UK label, and so just a little. I mean, the milestones are like a little bit all over the place, but at the same time, it's just like I have so many creative interests that I'm trying to, incrementally grow, but it's still. I mean, it's so much fun at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's chaotic, like the process, but also, the results are great.
Being that you had a space downtown on 4th Avenue and since left that space, how has it changed your creative approach?
I would say I look at things a bit differently because when I had the space, I was spending so much time there, which you have to do in order for, every time somebody buys something, especially with the business model that I had, those are one-on-ones, so they need to be replaced on the rack. So that's great. That's a sale, but also it's like I have to go in the back and make something else. So it was just like this constant push and pull of trying to figure out how to manage my time effectively, but also, not burn myself out. which I still ended up kind of doing by the by the end of it. It was just like, it feels a little bit like work, and it didn't feel that way to begin with. And obviously it's work. But there was when it's something you have to wake up and do every day at a certain time, and there's so much structure, as somebody who's also trying to operate that creative part of your brain, that structure can like kill some of that creativity. Mm-hmm. So I would say that I'm still in the process of figuring out what it looks like moving forward and how to effectively manage my time. Because sometimes too much freedom can be killer too.
Yeah.
So there's finding that middle ground where it's like, there's not so much structure where you feel like a robot, but there's also not too much freedom where you're just kind of idly wandering and not doing enough to push forward what you're trying to do. So I would say the difference is a little less structure, mm-hmm. but I'm in the process of restructuring and figuring out what Black Broccoli looks like for the next 5 years.
What advice would you be able to impart upon aspiring artists and entrepreneurs that would like to do similar things or different things that you're doing the path that you're...
That's tough. Because I want to say start.
Yeah.
That really is the key to everything. Because if you don't, I feel like, once you do something and you put yourself out there, there's always going to be those people that are like, oh, I could do that. But if you could, wouldn't you just do it? It's not as easy as it sounds to just start something and then...
It's like as a hooper, like somebody in the bleachers yelling out, I could do that. Why is he pump faking 3 times? And then they get out there and realize you can get your stuff thrown into the upper deck if you don't do that. So.
Exactly. Or and even to piggyback off that, it's like to think that you have the ability to like, oh, I could have played in the league. And then when you're on the court with somebody that actually played in the league and they're playing at a different speed,
yeah.
You're like, I can't.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as just putting the ball in the basket. There's so much work.
Inordinate amount of hours that you have to put in to just get to the court.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I like that you said start, because I'm all about action. So as long as you can start, you can work your way from being a neophyte to an expert at your craft, as long as you're willing to put in the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
10,000 hours.
Yeah. They say, how can the people get a hold of you? What are your handles for social media, website, etc.?
Shopblackbroccoli.com, which if you go there, you can see a little bit of my story, and then the current pieces I'm working on. There's a little bit of an archive of pieces I've done, and then that has all the links to my socials, but also _Black Broccoli on Instagram, and nickarcade.nes on Instagram. And yeah, I think that's all my socials.
That's
Nick Arcade on Twitter.
Okay.
That too, I guess.
That's impressive to memorize all them handles and find you.
It's a lot.
Yeah, man. But Nick Arcade, Black Broccoli, it's been a pleasure delving deeper into your story, what makes your brand, and I appreciate you. I applaud you, and we want you to keep expanding and growing.
Man,
thank you. Your success.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah,
Nowadays
appreciate
the
you.
pain follow follow me. Deal with trauma privately. I don't wanna be a burden, I handle things defiantly. Spent a decade searching for a higher power guiding me. Figured out that faith is not up there, that it's inside of me. Act with execution, what's a plan with zero action? Faced with bad habits, knowing it's a magnet to my imbalance. I'm somewhere between confidence and arrogance. The middle ground is treacherous, I work on getting out of it. Pops is looking